BBC World News' Nick Bryant explores how Trump has changed the presidency and the country in ways no one could have imagined.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Within the first 24 hours of taking this solemn oath of office, it became clear that Donald Trump would change the presidency more than the presidency would change him. There was the dystopian language of his inaugural address.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
There was the argument about the size of the inaugural crowd.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
Our press secretary gave alternative facts to that.
Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
The President and First Lady of the United States will take their first dance.
There was the music at his inaugural ball, Frank Sinatra's I Did It My Way, and his decision to keep using Twitter.
Should I keep the Twitter going or not? Keep it going? I think so.
Then there was the appearance before the memorial wall at CIA headquarters, where he tore into the press. The start of what came to be a running battle.
And the reason you're my first stop is that, as you know, I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth.
Donald Trump was written off as a joke when he first announced his candidacy for the White House. But now he's become America's 45th president. And they'll be talking about this moment for centuries to come. This America First president would be an American first.
Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey.
The first mass protest of the Trump era took place less than 24 hours after his swearing in. A pink blossoming of the Trump resistance. The Women's March provided an early indication of the passions his presidency would arouse and the divisions it would expose.
It gives me hope for our future. It was a really dark day when the election results came in.
It's not that we hate Trump, but we hate what he stands for. Bigotry and racism, we're not going to stand for that.
Say it clear! Refugees are welcome here!
Donald Trump's attempts to enforce a travel ban on a list of mainly Muslim countries, including Iran and Syria, once again brought protesters out onto the streets. A policy that the Trump administration claimed would defend America was seen by opponents as an attack on American values. Donald Trump's efforts to build a wall along the Mexican border, a totem of his presidency, exposed more fault lines in American society.
He campaigned on it, he won on it, so what's the big deal? Why is everybody surprised? We need it now.
Go back to your homes!
He is a crisis. He is a crisis to our country, to our democracy. He thinks he's a king.
You will not replace us!
Race exposed yet another rift. And when torch-carrying neo-Nazis paraded in Charlottesville, Virginia, it took the president 48 hours to specifically condemn these white supremacists. When a counter-protester was killed after a racist deliberately rammed his car into the crowd, the president claimed there was a moral equivalence between white supremacists and the demonstrators who opposed them. I was present in Trump Tower for what became one of the most extraordinary press conferences I've witnessed.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
But Trump was beloved by his base.
I love you, and you love me, and that's the way it is.
Those who packed his stadium rallies, a dramatic new departure for a US president. Those who'd sent him to Washington precisely because they wanted him to be unconventional.
We've been talking about this for a long time, thank you.
All the time he was amassing a significant record of conservative accomplishment. He passed a big tax cut. He renegotiated the NAFTA trade agreement with Canada and Mexico.
The workers who poured their souls into building this great nation were betrayed. But that betrayal is now over.
I will never forget that to whom much is given, much will be expected.
He managed to get 3 right-wing Supreme Court justices onto the bench and to appoint hundreds of conservative judges. Promise made, promise kept was a Trump boast that rang true.
So we're getting out.
Taking America out of the Paris climate change agreement was another campaign pledge that he made real, and another crowd pleaser for his base. But his own luxury property at Mar-a-Lago risks being inundated by the rising waters. And further down the Florida coast, Miami is at risk of becoming a modern-day Atlantis.
Miami Beach is going to disappear. But don't tell that to all these people building all these new houses and apartments. They don't want to hear it. They're in total denial.
A local environmentalist, Dan Kipnis, gave us a waterborne tour.
Our so-called president thinks it's a hoax. It's a Chinese hoax. I mean, I can't believe it. I live right in the middle of climate change every day. We are so affected here. How dare the leader of this great country say it doesn't exist? It's impossible. He can't be thinking this way. And the people around him cannot be thinking this way.
But returning to the all-important Rust Belt, people who'd supported him reported an uptick in economic activity, partly because there were a lot more coal barges on the Ohio River. This billionaire in the White House remained a working-class hero in the post-industrial landscape that had provided a seedbed for his candidacy. Tugboat owner Bob Harrison was happy to have a businessman in the White House.
Like the switch was turned on. We're busy. And we got more stuff going on, and our business has dramatically picked up.
And you think that's the Trump effect?
Yes. Like I talked to different people. We talked about, call it the Trump bump and that. So it's been good for us.
Good morning.
In the Bible Belt too, evangelicals who'd overwhelmingly supported his candidacy seemed to have little problem with his highly unorthodox behavior. They saw in Donald Trump a fellow victim of liberal sneering, of elite condescension.
We like somebody that'll just say what's on their mind, speak whatever it is you want to say, and say it as plain spoken as you can.
I don't agree with some of the words he uses, but he's doing more than any of the presidents that have done in the past.
You think he's one of the truly great presidents?
I really do.
We happened to be at Mount Rushmore on the day that the president suggested his profile should be chiseled into the rock. There we encountered a number of Trump supporters, now experiencing buyer's remorse.
He was the right guy at the time to shake things up, to move things forward, but he's causing too much chaos and not bringing enough order to the government.
I think his ego is getting in the way, so I'm hoping he's going to take a step back.
I don't think he's been as presidential as I ideally want.
Never have we witnessed a US leader who so flagrantly flouted the normal rules of presidential behavior.
Hey, I'm president. Can you believe it, right? I never thought I'd be called a politician. I don't like it, but it is what it is.
Though it's Twitter Trump that has inevitably generated many of the headlines, it was the televisual possibilities of the presidency that seemed to animate Donald Trump most. Not long after taking office, he instructed aides to treat every day as if it were an episode of a TV show in which he vanquished the opponents of his presidency. Television cameras often became flies on the walls, a style he actively encouraged.
When I ran, it was Make America Great.
Here the cameras were invited to linger at a cabinet meeting where officials delivered a hymn of praise.
It's a privilege to serve.
I can't thank you enough for the privilege that you've given me.
I want to thank you for getting this country moving.
So I'm thrilled to have a chance to help you live up to your campaign promises.
Mr. President, we thank you for the opportunity and the blessing that you've given us to serve your agenda.
To some, the footage resembled state television, a Pyongyang on the Potomac moment.
Thank you very much. Battle between good and evil.
Foreign policy regularly took the form of made-for-television show diplomacy. On his first international visit, a stop in Saudi Arabia, he happily participated in a bizarre ceremony that looked like a cross between a mystical ritual and the draw to decide on the group tables ahead of the FIFA World Cup. His summitry with North Korea was intricately choreographed for the cameras, but failed to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. Some of the more cinematic moments of his presidency, such as when he met the plane carrying 3 Korean-American prisoners released by Pyongyang, were packaged into what looked like movie trailers. It was the commander-in-chief as action hero. Even when events went completely off the rails, such as when Kanye West made a visit to the Oval Office.
Non-political, no bull, put the beep on it, however you want to do it, 5 seconds delay. It is good energy in this.
He didn't seem to mind, so long as they produced good television.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie.
Donald Trump also had an eye for the grand spectacular. This is pageant at the Lincoln Memorial on July the 4th in 2019. America's birthday turned into something of a personal celebration. Make America Great Again as a military tattoo. But some of the images that clung to his presidency were politically problematic. The wire mesh cages in the detention centers on the southern border, where children were separated from their families.
¿De dónde son ustedes? ¿Y tú?
Guatemala.
No llores. ¿Cierto?
¿Qué va a pasar con su consulado hoy?
Papá.
Let the children go now.
It's unacceptable, it's evil, it's disgusting, and it's an embarrassment to the United States.
This is a moral catastrophe, and we're breaking up families, and it has to end now.
There's a lot of love in this room.
This was the footage of him casually tossing toilet rolls to survivors of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, as if shooting basketball hoops. Another memorable image was the sight of him barging his way to the front of the family photo at NATO headquarters in Brussels. The president's controversial words also sometimes came back to haunt him. The time at this rally in Florida, when he seemed to encourage supporters to take matters into their own hands, after asking how to stop unauthorized migrants from coming over the border from Mexico.
But how do you stop these people? You can't. There's no... That's only in the panhandle you can get away with that statement.
Months later, one of his supporters mounted a deadly attack in El Paso, targeting Mexican immigrants. In one of America's deadliest mass shootings, 23 people were killed.
From the FBI over the last 2 years, the number of their investigations are racially motivated, and within that category, the majority are white supremacist extremists motivated.
Then there was the racist language he used against 4 congresswomen of color, telling them to go back to where they came from, even though 3 of them were born in the United States.
There is no bottom to the barrel of vitriol that will be used and weaponized to stifle those who want to advance rights for all people in the United States.
What did you think when you heard the tweet?
This is a distraction. This is a person that really wants to vilify, demonize not only immigrants, but even communities of color.
As this race row flared, he took aim at them again at a stadium rally in North Carolina.
And tonight I have a suggestion for the hate-filled extremists who are constantly trying to tear our country down. They never have anything good to say. That's why I say, hey, if they don't like it, let them leave. Let them leave.
The chance of send her back brought a rare rebuke from senior Republicans who felt the president had gone too far. I was on the National Mall that night filming the commemorations to mark the 50th anniversary of the moon landing.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
At the very moment the country was celebrating a unifying national mission. Detached from earthly politics, the president was actively sowing the seeds of American disunion. All the time there'd been a cloud hanging over his presidency, an investigation led by the former FBI Director Robert Mueller into whether the Trump campaign had colluded with the Kremlin ahead of the 2016 election. The probe resulted in a spate of prosecutions.
Traitor!
Of Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort,
Traitor!
who was found guilty of multiple charges, including conspiracy against the United States. Of his longtime political advisor, Roger Stone, who was convicted of witness tampering and lying to Congress. When he delivered his long-awaited report, Mueller found that the Russian meddling had been sweeping and systematic, and identified links between Trump campaign officials and individuals with ties to the Kremlin.
Witch hunt. Witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. It's a rigged witch hunt. Fake news and the Russian witch hunt. We got a whole big combination.
But it did not find sufficient evidence that the campaign coordinated and conspired with the Russian government. The White House claimed victory, but Robert Mueller made it clear this wasn't an exoneration.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. Under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office.
When evidence emerged of a quid pro quo between Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine, linking U.S. military aid to political dirt on the family of Joe Biden, the Democrats decided to punish him. In the 2018 congressional midterms, they'd won back the House of Representatives and used their majority to impeach the president.
Sadly, but with confidence and humility, with allegiance to our founders and a heart full of love for America, today I am asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment.
Only the third time it's happened in U.S. history.
Breaking news, President Trump promotes his...
There was a trial in the Senate where the Republicans used their majority to block the calling of witnesses and to deliver a not guilty verdict.
It is therefore ordered and adjudged that the said Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
It felt like the Republican Party was more like the Trump Party. The party line votes spoke of the polarization of America and the toxicity of Washington. It came to the toxic four when, on the eve of his acquittal, Donald Trump delivered his State of the Union address. Beforehand, he refused to shake the hand of the Democratic House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Afterwards, she ripped up his speech. It was hard to remember a president who walked away from more political car crashes, and his approval rating reached its highest level, 49%. He could also point to some foreign policy successes. The threat from the group calling itself ISIS was greatly diminished. He'd kept his campaign promise of moving the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. US forces killed the Iranian military general Qasem Soleimani, Iran's second most powerful figure. Donald Trump had a strong economy and the power of incumbency. Two factors that usually win a president 4 more years.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
But a far bigger crisis was about to engulf his presidency. The coronavirus confronted America with the biggest public health emergency of the past 100 years and exposed so many of the country's underlying conditions. Its income and racial inequalities, the inadequacies of its healthcare system, the rundown of its government, and its sickly politics. The polarization that even made mask wearing a political issue.
Can you take it up because I cannot hear you?
I'll just speak louder, sir.
Oh, okay, good. You want to be politically correct. Go ahead.
When the country needed to come together, Donald Trump remained a deeply divisive figure, and sometimes he was accused of being a super spreader of misinformation.
Looks like by April, you know, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true. Now we have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless. I think we're rounding the turn very much. You see what's happening in Europe, however, they have a very big spike.
The health crisis sparked the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. There was a buddy spare me a dime feel to aspects of American life. Even in the affluent suburbs, we saw scenes of middle-class distress. Cars queuing for hours to get handouts. Vehicles including Mercedes and high-end SUVs.
The problem is, really, the people have gone now without 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 paychecks, and it's starting to catch up.
We have to pay the rent, gas, cars, and all the stuff.
I mean, you've got a beautiful car. Did you ever imagine that you'd be lining up for food?
No, never.
So you're not making any money at the moment?
No.
So you need this food?
Yes, we need it.
Then, in the midst of the pandemic, a video went viral. It showed a black man, George Floyd, being suffocated by a white police officer. Across America, fury broke loose. And during the Black Lives Matter summer that followed, we witnessed the most widespread racial turbulence since the late 1960s. Donald Trump's main response was to crack down on protesters and present himself as a law and order president. America seemed to be unraveling. And a leader who'd so often sown the seeds of racial disunion faced a destructive harvest. As the election neared, Donald Trump faced a personal crisis. He himself had become infected with COVID-19. Facing difficulties breathing, he decided to leave the White House and get medevac to hospital. But as his condition improved, he eyed the televisual possibilities of the moment. He summoned the presidential motorcade and drove past his supporters, maintaining a vigil outside the hospital. But this was merely a curtain raiser. Donald Trump had a more dramatic finale in mind. A homecoming that provided perhaps the defining images of his presidency. To his fans, it looked like the happy ending of a movie. To his critics, it looked like a scene from a comic opera. National savior or national joke. A polarizing American president for these polarized American times.